discussion. So, what's happening in the Heights? Is Northern Manhattan real estate at its historical peak?
Well, like I think that there's a clear indication that when people with a big amount of dollars go and buy a property in our community with the intention to turn it over and push our small business out, as also our tenants who've been living in rent regulation, this is something that we need to do. This is something that we should call for our attention, and I've been working the last couple of years since I've been elected to the council in some bill that is trying to come out with a solution on how landlords who buy a property, they should work closely and support more our small business. I believe in a society where everyone should be able to do fine. People who invest the money, they should be able to get a return. However, it is important to continue supporting our small business, and our small business should not pay the price for the big corporation to get a large return. And I think that that's what we've been seeing in many places in the city. And I'm committed as a boy, as a council member from North Manhattan, to do whatever it is in my ability to stop the level of gentrification that happened in the area. And I hope that it will not happen in North Manhattan.
There was a story, I guess, in the Real Deal magazine about one particular block in Washington Heights. Are you familiar with it?
I am familiar. Unfortunately, the commercial rent law are dictated by the state. And we know what happened in the last Senate election, where the real estate invested billions of dollars to be sure that they could defeat the effort to provide majority to the Democrats.
And let me jump in. We're gonna correction. First of all, that story was in the Village Voice, and we're gonna talk to Solange Uwimana from the Voice in just a minute. But what block of Washington Heights, Councilman? Just so people know what we're talking about.
Well, what is it?
Actually, Solange, you want to identify the block?
The 151st and Broadway is one of those blocks where there's a new landlord who bought a piece of land. It's like for a area for building that he bought it together. And I believe, that again, that's a particular block is 5 blocks away from the hospital. I know it's a great opportunity for someone to come out with new businesses and expecting that they will have a good and large traffic.
Just 5 blocks from the big New York Presbyterian Hospital there on 168th and Broadway.
Well, yeah, yes, 165 because we have a children's hospital at 165 and Broadway.
Right,
so
it starts that far down.
There's a large traffic in that area, foot traffic in that area. But I just hope that, that those individual corporations that have a large package of money, for them to understand that they should be able to plan, do well, get a good return, at the same time also that they support our small business to stay in our community.
So is there a policy response before you go that you think is required to this kind of turnover?
Well, there's a bill that we have at the council. It's called the Survival Bill. It's a bill that it didn't get a support of the previous speaker that we have at that time. We reintroduced the bill, Councilmember Palma and myself as a two co-prime sponsor. And also all the council members, they had added names to sponsor this bill. But both council member Palma and I, who also were prime co-sponsor in the last section, we believe that it is important to get our small business survival bill. And the intention of that bill is that to create a new law where when a landlord and the small business, they cannot agree with the price or they renew the lease, that there should be arbitration, that both of them, they should go make the case, mediate, and come out with something that benefits both.
Arbitration before an existing small business gets evicted because of rent increases in a surging real estate market. City Councilman Adonis Rodriguez from Washington Heights and Inwood, thank you for coming on with us.
Thank you, Ryan.
And joining us now are Solange Uemana, editorial fellow at the Village Voice, who wrote the story about the eviction of the 7 businesses at Broadway and 163rd Street, and also New York City Councilman Mark Levine of Morningside Heights and Hamilton Heights, the district just below Councilman Rodriguez, also affected by this kind of change. Hi, Councilman.
Hey, Brian. Great to be here. Actually, the stores in question are in the northern end of my district. I live just 2 blocks away.
Okay. And Solange, welcome to WNYC.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us about your story on that block.
So it was, I guess, unexpected when I got the story, and I just wanted to investigate further. So what I found was that on that block between, I think it's 162nd and 163rd on Broadway, which is in Washington Heights, is that there was a string of about 7 businesses who were given eviction notices about 4 years after the new owners took over the building. And so when those leases expired, the new owners didn't renew them, so they were sort of left in limbo with these month-to-month leases. And so that was the biggest thing that came out of this story, is that, you know, when you have these immigrant-owned businesses in large parts in the city that don't really know what to do and they don't know who to turn to, they're just disappearing.
So, Councilman, they turned to you?
They did, and we were able to connect him to some wonderful attorneys at Legal Services, Legal Aid Society's Community Development Project. You know, Brian, you and I have talked in the past about the fact that so many residential tenants go to housing court without an attorney. Well, the same is true for mom and pop businesses, and so they're signing leases which have unfavorable terms and don't give them a right to renew at the end of the term. And then when they are in a difficult dispute with the landlord, they have very little backup. We were able to get at least a smoother exit in this case for these tenants, but the bottom line is there's very little protection for commercial tenants in New York City and New York State law. As bad as the situation is for residential tenants, and you've focused a lot on this, including today, there's almost no protection to a commercial tenant who's facing a lease renewal. If a landlord wants that tenant out, they get 30 days notice. That's it. If the landlord wants to double or triple the rent, there's nothing the tenant can do. If the landlord wants the tenant to stay month to month with no lease, as happened for years on end, then again the tenant has really no recourse. And what's interesting about the case of 162nd, rent was a factor, but I think an even bigger factor was these were very small stores, 400 square feet, 600 square feet, and to attract chains and higher paying tenants, landlords like to aggregate multiple small stores. And that's why you'll often see 1 store stay vacant, 2 stores stay vacant, 3 until a landlord can assemble a big plot. We could address this in the zoning code, which has been done already in the southern part of my district and the lower 100s on the west side, where new storefronts are going to be limited to 40 square feet width. New banks are going to be limited to 25 square feet. This is actually a disincentive for chains, but small businesses are great at thriving in those kind of smaller niche storefronts, and we'd like to see that continue to be the bread and butter of uptown retail.
And Solange, what's the role of institutional capital as opposed to other kinds of money?
So after the recession, a lot of the institutional players pulled out of some of these neighborhoods. And so since the institutional players are more beholden to big banks,